The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
And we are back with another tremendous little episode of the show. Today, for your ears, we have a discussion of the 1973 film, The Day of Jackal. Along for this journey is an award-winning author of the novels Bender at Bon Parisian. Is it Parisian?
Yeah, Bender at the Bon Parisian.
Okay. Bender at the Bon Parisian and Pigeon, Mr. Pres Maxson.
What a warm welcome. Thanks, Brandon. Man, I love your show. I've been listening to it. Man, I gotta say, like, I feel like every movie I either love or I sort of like start to love because I'm listening. I guess that's probably your point or probably one of your missions. So well done you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And you and I, we met back a couple, was it like going to be 2 years ago, maybe at the PopCon in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Because that was the first one I did. That's the first one I took Pigeon to, but then I saw you again, like just a few months later, they did the indie one.
Yeah. They were like about 6 months apart, I think. Cause it was like right before New Year's Eve. I ended up like, I was going there just to do a live episode of my old podcast. And then I wound up with like pants down. This is your podcast stage. Here you go. And my co-host from my other show didn't show, or he didn't come. And then my producer couldn't make it. And I was just like, well, I got to do something. I got this whole table to myself. Like I was just supposed to go up for an hour, do my show. And that was it. And I was going to maybe do 2 episodes because the signups were very light. And so I decided like, I'm going to go around to like some of the artists and stuff that are here and see if they just want to come talk. And then I found out I couldn't record any of it. They didn't have any recording device. It was just like entertain the hallway. And I found you and it was like, hey, and you were like, yes. I think you were one of the first people I talked to too. I was like, really? I was like, okay. Like, and then I was worried people were going to blow me off or whatever, but you were like, yeah, super cool and super into it. And we had a great conversation up there. And I know I have a guest and I'm just the one talking here. This is really bad, but I'm building up Pres here. So this is like talking to you and going, man, I wish even if I could record it, I would have loved to have an avenue of our chat. Cause we kind of bailed on some of your stuff, but just talked about us living. We realized we lived in Los Angeles around the same time and started talking things. And
right.
I thought that was pretty interesting. And I was like, man, I wish I would record that. But even if I did, I didn't have an avenue to do that. And it's sort of where the genesis that weekend of where my the show started coming to light and filling out. So you were part of that big why how this show has come to be was talking to you that weekend, getting those interviews down and just being like, oh man, and just having you on talking about your book, talking about things. And, somewhere through that in my brain comes this show. So wow. I have you to thank.
Well, that makes me feel pretty good. I got to admit, like when I first got to that thing in Fort Wayne, I'd never done a convention before. And I was like, I'm not only going to be here to try and get readers, I'm just going to, see who I can kind of connect with. So even before I knew you had a podcast stage, even before I knew there'd even be an opportunity for me to do something right then and there, I thought, I'm just gonna, try and meet him and try and get on his podcast. And so you were targeted early, whether you knew it or not, by me. Boom. And I did wind up having a really good time talking to you. I felt like I walked away from that convention saying like, okay, I think under any circumstances, I would have met Brandon. We would have been friends.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we definitely. And then I got so excited when I went to the next PopCon and saw you there, and you were like, I was looking for you. I was like, I was looking for you.
Yeah.
And we had booths pretty close to each other, but yeah, that was really fun. That was an exhausting weekend, that one. Had no sleep, but yeah, that was definitely, and it looked like you had a pretty decent time. You had a cool video at you had like a little ping pong game.
Yeah,
Or game with the ping
that's
pong
like a
ball.
little that's like a little promo I run that is a leftover from visiting author fairs. Like when you go to a library for an author fair, there's 30 authors in the room in a giant circle of tables, and everyone's fighting for a reader. Like one person will walk in the room and start making the rounds, and everyone's like trying to sell them their book. So I thought I got to have something better. I got to have an experience. This just comes back to marketing, which I'm familiar with in my job, but it's like, I need to give them an experience they won't forget. So I had this little ping pong ball and a bucket, and I'd say, okay, I'll give you the book for free if you can throw it in the bucket without looking. Mm-hmm. And then the gimmick is, even is if you make it, I will give away a book to you. And it happens so infrequently that I don't mind that. And then I also say the deal is you have to let me like film me with my phone, because then I go and make like a little promo video and use all the misses as like in my promo video of like what a good time I've had at the convention, the author fair. So that was always my way of like trying to stay memorable with people in those conventions.
Yeah, and with this convention, it's funny. I had a couple friends I knew at that one, and they were like, dude, we met this really cool guy. He's this author. And I was like, Pres? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I know him. Yeah. They're like, oh, you do? Like, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was cool. But yeah, so you're an author now, but you were trying to break out as a musician originally.
That was, I mean, yeah, I followed my passion after college. When I got my degree in writing, I can't remember if we've ever talked about this. I got my degree in writing from Iowa, but I moved with the rock band I was in at Iowa, with one of the guys. He and I moved to Los Angeles and started a new band there. And that was like, my passion for a little while. And it's not that I ever stopped writing. I just like all my creative output writing wise was channeled into the band, and writing music or, lyrics to music. And we had tons of fun. We made like zero money, and I kind of fell into a job in television, and that kind of became my day job, but it was really fun also. And that kind of led to more avenues in music, because the higher I got in television, the more, sort of power I had, that if we needed a musician for the show, like I had myself and my network sort of to help, the producers with. And then I moved here, and the music exists here. The music industry definitely exists in Indiana. But I played dueling pianos for a while downtown, and it was real fun, but sort of exhausting. And it was probably right around 2010 or so, maybe 2011, when I thought, I got to start doing something that's not taking me out of the house every night. I was married now, and I really wanted to spend time with my wife. I didn't just want her to come home from work and me to like leave.
Right.
And it was like, I want to be able to do something that's quieter in the house. And I thought, well, maybe it's time to just start channeling my creativity, not away from music, but towards something maybe a little bit more, quiet. And maybe I thought, I've been doing the music thing for 10 years. Maybe it would be healthy to stretch my creative brain in a new way. So that's when I first started writing my first novel. And I still play a lot of music. I still do it. And it's especially really fun when you have kids now. I play every day, and I play with them. And I still play gigs like every now and then, because it's really fun. But yeah, being a writer has really sort of taken over my professional life. So, and I don't hate it.
Yeah. And your book, you have two books, and you gave me a copy of Pigeon, which you signed, which normally you're like, here you go. He probably just put it on a shelf. I read the book.
I know, and that impressed me.
It took me a couple months. I was like, I'm gonna read this damn thing, and then took it with me. I went on this family vacation that was not like my type of ideal vacation, but that book was one of my favorite parts of it because I really got into it. I was like, all right, you probably wrote a nice little book, but I was like, this is really damn good. I I really enjoyed it. It was very modern noir and reminded me, kind of had a vibe like this movie I like called The Long Goodbye. And it had this world that you created in France, kind of this underground, wealthy people's world. If you want to tell them about the little premise of Pigeon before I just go throwing crazy details.
You're nailing it. Go ahead.
But yeah, it's like a kid whose parents own a restaurant. He's kind of a bus boy, and then he stumbles into like the typical Hitchcock, Coen brothers, random regular person caught in this big unveiling mystery. And the details you go through are like so unique, down to like the white clothes you have to wear at the one club, and they got the game, and there's the history of the game, and it's got you're really good at. I don't have to take a lot to picture these in my mind. They come right away. Like I envision it. I've never been to France, but I envisioned your France really easily. And there's a lot of, you play with expectations really well in there, and you've got a really fun it's a little bit goofy ending, but it's totally earned.
Nice. Good. But, that's good to hear.
But I enjoyed the hell, and I'm not like, oh, I met this author, give his book, I'm kissing his ass. No, it's a terrific book. It's really fun. It goes really fast. Many points I didn't want to put it down, and awesome.
Well, a few things about it. For the uncut YouTube version of this, here's what it looks like.
Oh yeah,
called Pigeon, and you got all those major plot points right. It started when I was trying to I can even do a little bit better lighting here for the YouTube version. It started when I kind of had this idea to make up a sport and never really tell all the details of the sport.
Right.
It was like, that's all I had to go on. And it was just like, all right, I'm going to make up like some stupid sport, but I'm never really going to say the rules. And it's going to be some little mystery about this sport. And it kind of grew from there. But the idea that it was a sport no one's ever heard of unless you're like ultra rich. And I felt like there was kind of a lot of fodder there, and the fish out of water idea is easy. Like the ordinary guy thrust into the mystery is actually pretty easy to write, because you think, okay, the audience can very easily see it through his eyes because he's new to everything. So like this whole world. And we'll get into this a little bit, but like I really love Paris, and it's sort of my favorite city abroad to be in. And my first book, Benedict the Bon Parisian, is set in Paris not in a much more real version, because it's like the same type of storytelling. But it was just, I decided to set it there because it was like complete escapism for me. It's like I wanted, I'd sit down to write, and I could picture where I wanted to be and kind of picture what that felt like and try and put that on the page. With Pigeon, the idea was when you walk down the street in any city, you'll pass a doorway and you'll kind of say like, wow, that's a beautiful building. That's a beautiful doorway. Like, I wonder what's behind that door. Or I wonder what's down that street that's like a little quieter and not scary, but just like less traversed. Or you'll look at that high rise and you'll say like, wow, whose office is that? Like way up there, There's an element of mystery like in all these cities, and Paris absolutely has that with its, beautiful architecture and sections of the city have like wildlife that has really creeped in, whether it's ivy on a building or old parks, stuff like that. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to set this book, Pigeon, in real life Paris, but absolutely like make up beyond my wildest imagination what's behind the door.
Yeah.
So that's where it kind of came from. But it is goofy, and I'm glad to hear you say I earned the goofy ending.
No, it's totally it goes for it, and I'm like, I was like, this is great, and it was totally earned, like every bit of it, and I really like your resolution with the main character at the end too, where I could see where there'd be a temptation to go another way with him.
Sure.
But I think it's perfect, and it shows your strength as a writer to where you know how to take him his journey.
Yeah, awesome, cool, thank you.
Definitely.
Well,
So with something like Pigeon, if there were to be, there is no audiobook version of it yet, correct?
I think there's a way for independent authors to do it. I'm not in the know, and I mean, I have, because as a musician, I have all the recording stuff,
right,
to like put it down. But it's like I'd rather spend 8.5 hours writing something new than recording myself doing it. So I haven't found my way through the woods on an audiobook yet.
Who would be your dream, like, actor or somebody to read your book? Like, who would be the perfect fit for Pigeon?
Sean Connery.
Oh, yeah.
No. I mean, that's an iconic voice.
He would have done. I mean, that was the kind of work he would do in his later years. So
I mean, yeah, he you know, I don't know, gosh.
I should grab the croquet mallet.
Yeah, I should grab the mallet. Sure. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know, actually. You know, probably someone like Josh Gad. His like personal brand is like a little bit closer.
There you go. Yeah.
I've never thought about that though. What a great interview question.
Yeah. I know. And do you visualize when you're creating the characters and exploring them? Do you ever take them from, like, how much of it comes from people you know? How much comes from like imaginary dream casting in your head, or are they just who they are, start to finish, like your legit own creation with their?
That's a good question. It varies. Like in my first book, Bender at the Bon Parisian, which, dude, I am happy to send you. I didn't realize, I shouldn't be surprised that you don't have it, because I didn't give it to you. But
yeah, I'll only read it if you give it to me now.
No, but that's how. Hey, that is how it works for indie authors.
Right.
Like, you know, if you're not involved, there's not a huge chance. I shouldn't say that. I actually am I feel very lucky to have readers that I don't know personally.
Right.
But Bender is like, I mean, first long form like novel I'd ever written, and so that the main character is basically my voice, and my wife is his wife, the main character's wife. But I realized, like, when I was writing it, that I could envision myself as the main character. Yeah, he makes a few choices that I probably wouldn't make, but he's not too far off. He wouldn't have allowed himself to get in a dangerous situation the way they get into a dangerous situation in that book. The way I would let that, but I needed that for the story. I needed him to have that willingness in the story. But I pretty quickly realized that my wife couldn't, as she is in real life, could not function in the book as the wife of the main character, because just for the storytelling, I needed her to be the risk taker in the relationship. That's not how, you know, our marriage is. I'm the risk taker. I needed her to be a lot less or a lot more trusting of strangers immediately than my wife like really is. And the more I started writing it, I realized I needed her to look different, like her, like it was. So I really, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I used to say it started as my wife, but it turned into somebody else completely. And I was picturing someone close to the style of this poetry professor I had in school, who was like this kind of like young free spirit woman, who was a grad student at the time. But that's usually how it starts for me. To answer your question, like, it starts with a vision of somebody I know and veers from it until in the end, it doesn't sound like the person in real life. Mm-hmm. And the visual in my head sometimes sticks with that person, or at least elements, or sticks with the character, elements of the original person. But it's like, it's really hard to say, you know, oh, hey, I base this character on you, and for the person to pick it up and find similarities. I'm more apt that the person would pick it up and say, this is what you think of me, and I have to explain, right, yeah. No, it turned into someone who's not you, but you kind of inspired it.
I would not say that.
I would not say it, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Just to note that Pigeon Won Book of the Year with the Lady Godiva Award from Naked Reviewers, and was a finalist in the Indie Book Awards. Earned honorable mention in both Paris and New York Book Fest. And in 2016, 2017, and 2018, you were the Nouveau, which is a local publication in Indianapolis.
Used to be.
Used to be, yeah. You won Best Local Author nominee in the Best of Indie Awards until they discontinued it, which I think the Indie Star picked it up or something.
Well, Indie Star had their own for a long time, but I don't know if they have an author category. I've never looked or anything.
Yeah, my old podcast was a finalist one year in one of those Best of Indie things once.
Yeah,
we lost to a what was
one
it?
of the members of the five.
It was like this erotic storytelling one.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was, but yeah,
that's my mom's podcast.
Yeah, it was weird. Like nobody in the podcast scene knew of it, heard of it, knew it was there, and it just popped up, got all the votes. Like, oh, all right, who are these people? Like, what is going on? Like, we didn't know this existed here, but that was a fun one. One more question. What sort of, with writing, are there any sort of extensions from that you hope to launch into, or other endeavors you'd like to explore if given the opportunity to leap off of novel writing, or maybe, evolve your writing into a different form?
I don't. Yeah, good question. Never gotten that question before. I think an evolution like that would come naturally, just like kind of how I evolved into writing novels out of music. It's not like for years I was saying like, oh, someday I'm going to do this. Just like that, there came a time when I had a forcing function to evolve into it, and I kind of thought, like, I just sat back and was like, well, what makes me happy, and like, what do I really want to do that'll kind of like be the next logical creative step. And right now I don't have the desire to evolve out of, writing novels. I mean, I've done a lot of like other short form writing. Like, I'm not a good poet, but I like every now and then enjoy doing it, but it's never like crossed my mind really to like do like a poetry book, like slide one in there, or anything. I make a living as a copywriter, and so that kind of scratches the short form itch, a lot when you're. And I feel like it helps me become a better novelist, because I have much more attention paid to the short quippy phrases and like a kind of a sentence by sentence edit than maybe I would as a novelist. So I don't think I have anything right now that I have earmarked for like the next evolution, but you never know. That's a nice thing about creativity. You never know where it'll lead you.
Gotcha. All right. Well, guys, we'll move on to the movie discussion now.
Oh, I love it.
The Day of the Jackal. The Day of the Jackal is directed by 4-time Academy Award winner Fred Zinnemann. Stars Edward Fox, Terrence Alexander, Olga Georgiev-Picot. If I murder a name, I apologize. Michael Auclair, Delphine Seyrig, and Michael Lonsdale. It's based.
Olga Georgiev-Picot is going to be pissed when she listens to this.
Olga Georgiev-Picot, yes. She sure will. She comments every week on the episodes. So. Based on the 1971 novel of the same name, the film is about a professional assassin known only as Jackal, who is hired to assassinate French President Charles de Gaulle in the summer of 1963. Now, Pres, so when we talked about this, you gave me a few films that you'd be up for doing, and I saw this one and it just stuck out. I was like, yes.
This was my number one.
Yeah, this was your number one, but you're like, I'm not sure if you want to go there. I'm like, I'm always going to pick the weird one or the outlier or the one that just stands out. And it's an important one to you. So tell, I guess share the importance of Day of the Jackal.
Yeah.
Before we go into it. Yeah.
Well, I've learned in the last minute that, unfortunately, Mademoiselle Georges Picot is no longer with us. She did pass away.
Oh, okay.
And so if you guys watch this, she's the member of OAS. She's the member of OAS that kind of goes undercover to try and get information against the Jackal. And frankly, she's beautiful. So I was hoping she would be alive and listen to this and want to be my friend. But my hopes were dashed. So my relationship with this film is not like actually complicated. I feel like, when I don't know what it was like for anybody else, but when I was a kid, my dad was always trying to get us to watch like his favorite movies, which as a father, I do now to our
right.
kids.
It's a rite of passage.
Right. And so I probably saw this movie for the first time when I was like, I don't know, 10, 11. And my dad was like, this is the most exciting, like suspenseful thing. And I don't remember a lot of parts of it. I just remember the ending because are we allowed to do like spoiler?
Oh, it's all over. So don't worry. Yeah, you can spoil it and you can jump all over. So if you want to hit some of the end first and come back, it's loose.
Okay.
Totally loose. But yeah.
So this is like probably the biggest spoiler in the whole thing. But when like the thing I remember most from that first viewing was when the Jackal gets blown away at the end.
Right.
It's like for a 10-year-old kid, that was like really, really memorable. And then I spent the summer in Paris when I was 16. And I don't remember if I watched the movie again, like right before we went or right after we went, maybe. But like that, like the great thing that one of the things that still to this day draws me to the movie is that even though it was shot in the early 70s, it still looks like Paris in the 90s or now, that this is a city that of course is a living, breathing city, but it looks like parts of Paris look like the way it looked in like 1800,
Yeah, it's part of the architecture, I would say, that they've
Absolutely.
left.
Yeah. And so so I had that kind of initial thing with it, and then I'd say about 10 years ago, flash forward, from when I was a teenager, flash forward many years, decade and a half, whatever, you get to about 10 years ago, and I don't remember the year exactly, but we were in this house and we were like falling asleep watching TV. And I think my wife was already out, and I went to Netflix. And in the earlier days of Netflix streaming, this was on Netflix. It's not anymore. But I remember being like, oh yeah, I remember Day of the Jackal, like, all right, I think I saw that once or twice when I was a kid. And so now I would have been like in my early 30s. And I watched it, and like I saw, and that's when I fell in love. Because I was kind of like, oh, right, I remember this. Oh, right, I remember that. And then it was kind of like, oh, I recognize that street in Paris. And oh, I recognize like that. And oh, where's that actor now, And so over the course of the last 10 years, I think I've seen this movie more than I've seen any other movie, with the possible exception of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But this is one of those that whenever I travel, I have it on my phone, because I know if there's not a movie I want to watch on the plane, I know I have a backup.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's a good movie to do that with. I think so.
Yeah.
I hadn't watched it in a few years before. I'd seen it before, like once or twice.
Yeah.
But I do like it. You can tell so much comes from this movie afterward. I mean, this is a clear influencer on the Bourne films, which the Bourne films come from a book. Kind of have this, which they had a Carlos the Jackal, which was based off a real life guy, but it kind of, you see kind of the similarities in the type of movie they're trying to do within the kind of environment they're trying to put it in. You could see that happening, but it's like a spy film, but it's not totally, like, it's got the spy film elements.
Yeah.
And it's like meets the like European car movies of that era, like the Italian Job. It feels like those. It's got like the hallmarks of those type of spy espionage things, like the guys listening on the headphones with the tapes rolling, and the secret meetings on the park benches. And it's a beautiful marriage of like the 60s psychedelic spy film meets the Bonnie and Clyde, like Francis Ford Coppola realism of the 70s. Like that, all that, boom, it's Day of the Jackal. And it's, definitely, since it's got this travelogue of France and Britain and Italy and Austria, so it's got all that beautiful makeover without even trying.
Shot. Yeah.
Without even trying. It's effortless.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a really cool shot I loved. I don't know if it was first ever thing of it, but there's the one of the cop when he's transferring that, and they've got a held on him driving through, like behind him, and you're kind of like hard on him behind, and you follow that cop all the way. It's through something, but when he's on the motorcycle driving through the streets and he goes under the arch, just really effective stuff that it feels like ingenuitive for that time. But I don't know who else might have done something like that. But
yeah, no, I was attracted to a bunch of stuff, especially sort of as a writer. I mean, I not really working at all in television or anything anymore. I feel like I have a nice appreciation for stuff like that, like beautiful shots.
Right, you used to be a casting director for like reality television.
Yeah, and like reality television is not, it's not art.
That would be the same deal for this, but
right.
But you can have a hand in, working in television and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I can absolutely appreciate like a beautiful shot and a beautifully, I feel like that there are several times in the movie when like the camera helps tell the story as much as the script does. And like to your point, like the stuff is all filmed on location in a way that like pays homage to the setting without being overly grandiose.
No, yeah, it's there, and it just so happened like they don't try to like, oh, look, we're right here, look at this landmark. It's
right, it's just there. It just makes it more real, puts you in that world.
It's shot effectively for the scene, not for the scenery. That's right. Probably
perfect way to put it. And I was like, when I really started kind of getting into it, the things that really attracted me to the storytelling are a little bit less visual elements. I mean, obviously, as a writer, I'm a little bit less concerned with the visual storytelling as I am just the arc of the action. And when I say action, I don't mean like fight action, but like the arc of what's happening. And what I kind of loved about it was that it's rooted somewhere in truth, in that it's like it's documented,
right,
that someone tried to kill de Gaulle. In fact, that whole opening scene with the drive-by attempt that de Gaulle survived, that happens within the first 5 minutes, the first 3 minutes, they like that happened, and that is like a documented attempt on de Gaulle's life. But everything after that is like kind of like, well, it could have happened. If it did, the rest of the world wouldn't know about it.
Right. Yeah, no, it's that interesting of a tale that could work. Yeah.
Right. And so that actually was something that, like with Pigeon and with Bender, it's like I wanted to be rooted enough in real Paris where you're like, I don't know, maybe down that road or behind that door, maybe something like that's going on. Like it's and there are enough goofy elements in Pigeon. Pigeon, to use your term, like goofy endings that I earned, like I probably don't want to advertise it too much as like goofy, because that's a little misleading, but it's like Pigeon is more imaginative than something you'd like think is happening in real life.
Right. Yeah.
But I kind of like thinking like, well, but how do we know? We don't. Like we're not in ultra billionaire circles that have made up their own sport,
Yeah.
And the novel that I finished right before we were all quarantined has that sort of theme and mode more than Pigeon, more than Bender. It's like it's one of those that's like I really wanted it rooted in reality, but you're looking between the lines of reality and saying like, okay, like I know this didn't happen, it's fiction, but would we know it actually if it didn't? And that's what like Day of the Jackal is like the quintessential like storytelling of like, well, if there really was like a master assassin hunting down de Gaulle and he gets like taken down before the public ever finds out about him, essentially, like would the rest of us know?
Right. Yeah. And that's what I kind of love about the film's perspective. It starts with, this guy, this assassin, his meeting, like he's going to do this. We're following him as he prepares and do this, and he's ahead of everything. And then once a key bit of information comes in and they hire in Michael Lonsdale's character, switch, and he sort of, he's going to keep going with his mission, but now he's the hunted, and you see him escaping and them being the ones we follow, getting clues. Like while he's trying to create these identities, he orders like a gun, a custom-made gun. He's getting passports, setting up really cool stuff with this job. We then see it from the other side where they're interrogating, they're getting info there. I mean, there's they set up the like affairs and getting behind him. They're getting close, losing him completely. And it's a lot of stuff done in such a way. It's pretty dry, but it's got a sense of and totally it's fantasy, but it's got a sense that you could buy that this is kind of how it goes. It's probably made shorter for entertainment value, but this is kind of how the process goes. There's lots of dudes in rooms. It's not just two dudes searching. There's lots of dudes. So much smoking, you'll have emphysema after the movie's over.
Even though you're not a smoker.
Yeah.
There's no smoke in your house. It comes through the screen at you.
It comes through the screen. And they've just, it's not humorless, but it's kind of a cold movie. Yeah. But it's interesting. Like the characters, they have an interesting thing. Like there's nobody as interesting as the Jackal in the beginning. Yeah. And then they bring in Michael Lonsdale, who's like, oh, I can be as interesting as the Jackal.
Yeah.
And so there you have your hunter hunted. And I really like what they do with the Jackal. Like he comes into these guys with the OAS, they hire him. They're French. He's British, right? Is that, I think they bring him in. Supposedly. That's the thing at the end is we don't.
It's like you don't really like you thought you knew who he was, maybe, and they try and dispel it at the end. Yeah.
Right. And so he comes in, and it's these uptight guys sitting down with mustaches and suits, like really plain black, regular ass suits. And here comes this guy. He's blonde. He's thin. He's clean shaven. He's got a light colored suit, and he's very like effeminate with his like mannerisms, his way he goes about. He's a little flashier, stylish dresser. It just sells you on this guy, and it's kind of this sense of this cool stealth sense of danger that this guy can pull all this stuff off. Like, he's not really intimidating where you just think everyone's dead in the room at every time, but you still don't trust him, but you're very intrigued to follow him, and you almost want to see him pull it off. Like that's how cool this guy is. But they really do it visually. He could be a silent movie. He works without any dialogue, and even when he talks, he's great.
Well, that's what I was about to say. It's amazing because like he comes in that first scene, and he has a normal conversation with them in the first scene when like he's telling them to rob some banks from their network and everything. But there's so much on-screen time where he's not speaking that as a writer, that was another thing where I was kind of like, wow, like how do I, because my primary like mechanism for pushing a story forward is dialogue. I personally, as a reader, am not a major fan of just like giant chunks of text, like describing things. I would rather say something in one sentence that like gives you a picture and let your imagination fill in some of the other things based on what you feel because of how the characters interact with each other. And I mean, that's just like a pretty basic principle in writing is like that, you don't want to tell the audience, your reader, you want to show them, So, and how do you show them? For me, it's like, well, I don't want to tell you about a character. I want you to hear them speak, and I want you to hear it come through naturally, the way real humans interact.
Yeah, they don't say two things and move on. They have conversations, right?
Right, yeah. Exactly. And so I was intrigued by the movie because like they don't use dialogue that way. They do here and there, but like the Jackal's on screen for so much time where it's just him. Like it was really on Edward Fox to tell us things about the character without saying it. and well, not just on Edward Fox. Obviously, there's a lot going on that tell us things about the Jackal, but that is another thing I kind of love about it. You know, it's just that he's this guy that he doesn't have to be speaking all the time, but when he does, it's like intelligent, it's suave, you know.
Mm-hmm. I saw it once. I didn't care. They quote unquote remade this movie in the 90s as the Jackal, which it doesn't really. It has like the setup's kind of there, but it's not. And they made Bruce Willis the Jackal, but I'm watching this, and if this movie's being remade in the 90s, I'm like, how was Jeremy Irons the first guy you did not call you call for this? Like, how did you not call him? This is
great call.
I'm watching the Jackal. I'm like, Jeremy Irons would kill in this role.
Yeah,
and maybe it's because it's too obvious, but yeah,
I don't know. He looks a lot like Edward Fox from
right.
That.
And wearing the ascots and stuff. I'm like, oh man, like yeah. I
think it's important to note that like Frederick Forsyth, the guy who wrote the novel, The Day of the Jackal, that inspired the movie, like pretty much disavowed the movie, The Jackal, and said like, I don't even want my name on the Jackal because it's such a departure from the actual story being told in The Day of the Jackal. I think I saw the Jackal in the theaters. I probably was in college. That's the one where he kills Jack Black for sport, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. That's the only part.
I think the big deal about that movie when it came out was that Bruce Willis kissed a guy. That was like the big controversy and selling thing. Like, oh, Bruce Willis kisses a man in this movie because he's this undercover guy or whatever. And I remember my memories on this movie are just, I saw it and I know that. Like, I think I
don't. I remember him killing Jack Black, but that was it. Test killing Jack Black.
Like my Richard Gere political thriller, I remember from the 90s more is Red Corner. That one I can tell you stuff about, but this one I just I don't know. But speaking of the novel, have you read the novel for this?
Yeah, I've read parts of the novel. I feel like that's one of those where the movie is actually really true to the novel. So I started the novel once. I have it downstairs on the shelf. I think I still have it, but I had it down. I had it like I'd start reading it and I'd just be like, wow, there isn't like a lot of new information here. And I do like find a lot of joy in reading, but it was just one of those that I didn't stick with because I already knew everything, that was going to happen. I have listened to it all the way on audiobook twice, I think.
Oh, okay.
And I really enjoy that. It's not that I don't count that as reading because you get the information, but you definitely process. Like I notice more things about language if I'm reading it than if I'm listening. If I'm listening to it, I'm hearing different things. I'm hearing more about the narrative. I'm hearing the person's voice as they express like the ideas. But no, so I'm familiar with the novel, and that the movie is actually really, really close to the storyline in the novel, if not almost identical.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I'd never read the novel, but I'm glad, that you have it right there. I feel like, with this type of subject matter, I feel like this would pair good. If you did a double feature, it'd be a long double feature because they're long movies, but I don't know if you've seen 3 Days of the Condor, but I feel like those two would complement. They're political thrillers both, and there's a Max von Sydow plays a hitman in 3 Days of the Condor, chasing after Robert Redford, but that'd be
I feel like it's a good that sounds solid. I think another double feature that would fit would be the Odessa File with John Voight.
Okay.
Do you remember that one? Because that's also based on a book by Frederick Forsyth.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that would fit real good. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe have you ever seen The Boys from Brazil?
I've heard that one. I have not seen The Boys from Brazil.
Man, it is a trip. Who is it? I think Gregory Peck maybe plays the demon doctor of Auschwitz or something, or it's about all the Nazis in hiding, and I don't think that one is a Forsyth novel, but I don't know, made similar time frame sometime in the 70s, like a little bit of a political thriller. But anyway, I feel like there are a couple things. But I'm gonna what was it, the Condor one? I'm actually
3 Days of the Condor. There's a book called 7 Days of the Condor, but I guess for a film that'd just be too much. But
too much.
Really like
Too
it.
many days.
It's from 1970s, and when Captain America: The Winter Soldier came out, they were touting it out as it was the superhero version of that. It's not.
Interesting. Huh.
But just because it was like a popular political thriller from back then.
Hey,
But, and they both have Robert Redford, so
well, yeah,
that's probably why they were touting it. But no, it's a good one. I like Michael Lonsdale. He does have, the opening has two narrators. Like he does some of it, which sounds like him prepping for the case, which I think is kind of a cool aspect if you look at it, because he comes in late, but it sounds like you're maybe watching him catch up to when he shows up. But then there's also another matter of fact narrator as well.
And well, is Lonsdale the narrator that opens the film? Because then it turns into like a radio announcer.
That's So okay, so maybe it's just a radio announcer, but it sounded like it was a handoff of a narrator. But Lonsdale
it's supposed to sound that way. It's
okay.
Like you're hearing it, and then all of a sudden a guy hits stop in the tape player, and you're like, oh, okay, I've been here.
Okay.
Like that. That's like a nice little mechanism for turning off the narration.
That is not bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was very dry. He just passed away this year too.
Did he? I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
It's been a rough year for the James Bond world. We lost Michael Lonsdale, Diana Rigg, and now Sean Connery.
Yeah.
But he was actually I like Moonraker a lot. I know it's a weird, but my thing is like with that one, I probably on record on podcasts talking about a billion, but I'll repeat that I think it's 3/4 one of the best Bond movies ever made, and the last quarter ain't bad. And Lonsdale's a strong reason I like his villain, Hugo Drax, and here you get to see him as a good guy, and he's really funny. He's got good chemistry with the young guy that he teams up with to do the search too. But and then he gets an action moment in the finale to shoot Jackal, but.
Well, and I think that so the young guy, Derek Jacobi, is in like tons of famous old like English stuff, like done tons of Shakespeare.
Yeah, he's very familiar. Yeah.
I saw him the first time in Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, which I sort of love. That's like one of my sick movies, when I have 4 hours to kill.
Right.
So when I saw the Jackal again 10 years ago, I was like, oh, Derek Jacobi, sweet. But what's so great about Michael Lonsdale, I feel like, is that like you get really close to LaBelle, that's the name of Lonsdale's character. You get really close to LaBelle, you get really close to the Jackal, and you don't really realize, like you forget that their on-screen chemistry is so good, you forget they've actually never interacted on screen until the final big moment, and I feel like it took me a long time to realize that I was really enjoying that about the movie, that these guys had on-screen chemistry together, even though they were never together. And at the end, you're like, wow, it's kind of a shame one of them has to die.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. And how do you feel if you're that like cop that busts in and then like gets taken out right before the end? I was almost to the end of the movie.
I know. Well, that actor was probably really pumped just to be there. I don't know.
Right. That's true. And that end scene where he's doing the assassination, there's a whole lot of like, in The Dark Knight when the Joker infiltrated the police, there's a whole lot of that in there too. And I wouldn't be surprised if Nolan was a fan of this movie. This is definitely in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, interesting.
From that.
Well, a couple other cool things, because I'd love to transition to a sec. I'm going to take over. I'll take over this interview.
There you go. Do it.
No,
they want to hear you, not me.
No. The like a couple other cool things that I like, because I'm about to transition to some things that might not work as well. Like I don't want to. Anyone listening, I don't want anyone to think that this is the perfect movie. I love it, but there are things that have not aged well. But before I do that, there are a couple things I love, like the entire end sequence shot at the parade, the Liberation Day parade.
Yep.
Was from what I've kind of like read, a pretty big deal to get that footage because the filmmakers were allowed access in ways that most cameras in the past hadn't been allowed access. So what, like the footage you're seeing at the end, I feel like you really do get an amazing taste for what this celebration feels like, in Paris. I think it's probably about akin to our 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
If every major city had, sidewalks 20 people deep, to see the parades and stuff, like I just feel like that's a lot of fanfare that you don't see that often these days. And the ending sequence where they're setting up the final day, which they're showing the parade set up, they're showing the crowds accumulate, really beautifully shot, and some beautiful footage in there. Might feel like a little long, but I feel like it's worth it because you also know you're at, like, no matter what happens, the movie ends on this day in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is either the day that Jackal kills de Gaulle or it's the day that he fails, so that they give it some weight, and I really like that. Going back earlier, did you notice that when he's with the gunsmith,
Mm-hmm.
and he's commissioning his sniper rifle, did you notice that the gunsmith has a picture of Kennedy out on the table?
Oh no, I did not notice that. Oh,
Which I
that's
think is a hella awesome
yeah,
Easter egg.
right.
Because this movie's written and shot in the 70s, but on the timeline of events, it's supposed to be the summer before.
Right, yeah, because 63, yeah.
Right. And so this is like a little nod that, like, oh, maybe the sniper rifle builder is a guy who's maybe in on something in America and has a target in America. And it's not even, Kennedy's picture is not even in a shot where, like, they don't even make it obvious. Like, he's talking with the Jackal, and it's like, I don't think it's a Life magazine, but it's like some magazine open to a page,
Yeah,
full profile of Kennedy, and you're kind of like, okay, I see you.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up. That's awesome. Yeah.
It's a pretty rad piece of storytelling, and I don't think I saw it on the first try or even the second try or third try or fourth try either, but just something you see later on. And so little moments like that, coupled with some of like the more obvious grand moments, like the parade set up at the end, make me think like, okay, Fred Zinnemann really knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these guys are master storytellers, and they're playing with a story here where the added challenge is that if they're really trying to root it in some kind of reality, how do you tell a story where the audience knows the ending in real life? In real life, de Gaulle doesn't get shot.
Right.
So, like, how do you tell a story and keep people involved even though they technically know the ending? Like, this isn't a Tarantino situation where he's just fictionalize the end of a conflict or something.
Right.
So, like, all that really, and I think this was up for Best Picture. I don't think it won.
Right.
You can maybe correct me on that, or I can look it up. I don't know.
I don't think I know.
It didn't win.
Zinnemann won for From Here to Eternity. Like, he won 4 Oscars. For directing was From Here to Eternity, and then he won a Best Picture as I think I was a producer for Man for All Seasons.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if.
Okay, nominations. Academy Award for Best Film Editing, which I think it won.
Okay.
Golden Globe, it was up for Best Motion Picture. BAFTA was up for Best Film. I don't think it won any of those, but anyway. So definitely had like some traction,
Oh yeah.
And
Zinnemann was a big number, so it would have been like the next film from him at the time. While a lot of people now might be like, who, director wise, because I don't think he's never lived in that time where he was like our current pop culture climate. He was an older director, but yeah, back then he would have been somebody to look out for. Or you've been going to a movie based just on his name, maybe.
Right. I do that. Man, I do that all the time. I see Tarantino movies.
Still like, I love doing that. I try to teach people that. I'm like, they're like, oh, that movie looked good. I'm like, do you know who directed it? Who? I'm like, well, did you like this movie? Yeah. I'm like, well, same.
Yeah.
Like, you should follow directors. It isn't as enjoyable as enjoying your Marvel to Marvel movie, or I like to watch this actor. I'm like, a director can be just as enjoyable because they do things you like.
I think I will always show up for an Edgar Wright movie. I think I will always show up for a Rian Johnson movie after Knives Out. I mean, I'm a Last Jedi fan also. I know that's polarizing, but
not here, not on this show.
Rock and roll. But no, those guys have earned my attention. They've told enough stories that I love that they've earned my viewership.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I, being a film guy, I have like a ton of those guys, but
of course.
But I started with following, like Tim Burton was my first one of, consciousness as a kid. And then, Hitchcock, of course, and Kubrick have long been with me, but like John Carpenter, followed like a lot of his stuff. And now I'm into like Italian horror directors that I love studying a lot of stuff they do. But this movie, actually, one of the things, and maybe it'll be a recommendation to you, but I checked out, I haven't watched the whole series. I'm still in the middle of like the first season. It's kind of been a slow back and forth because it's a bit dry, but there's this old British show that nobody remembers that I only found because of a podcast I listened to. It's called The Sandbaggers.
Okay.
And it's very much like a low rent version of what the Michael Lonsdale side of the story is trying to do. A lot of office, like, stings, dry British stuff. It ran for like 3 seasons back in the 70s, and it's, if you're into like this kind of vibe and stuff, it's right there. Its biggest problem is there's a lot of rampant sexism in their office. That's just kind of like, it's how things are. But if you're like into this kind of angle of spy stuff with like government agency, like business stuff, stings, watching kind of stuff, it's there. Like, I definitely think I was getting vibes from it on this one for sure.
Interesting. Cool. I'm going to take your recommendation. I'm going to check it out.
It was on BritBox, but I found it on Tubi TV, which is a free service. And it was I have, like I said, it's not a one that you could like go through a ton of episodes in a night. It's kind of a savoring show, but I definitely dig that. All right, so we'll move on to what else,
here, one second. Let's talk about some things that don't work in Day of Jackal for a second.
We're doing it, yes. Go for it. Go for it.
For all that stuff I love, I do think some things have not aged well. I mean, like the modern moviegoer is used to maybe some more realistic violence. Like the Jackal, have you noticed the Jackal has this knack for the one-touch kill, like the karate chop to the neck that kills a person instantly. Done, or like one guy, he pretty much, I think all he does is like punch him in the stomach and knee him in the balls and he dies. And he gets the word, like the most violent thing in the movie is his death. Oh yeah,
I would say
he gets it worse. You're right. And that's like, and you feel like that might be the only realistic one. Maybe even comic.
Well, that's got a little bit of camp in it because he flies against the wall.
But like the way he kills, the woman he has an affair with, he basically kill kisses her. I think you're led to believe that he strangles her while they kiss, but there's no like ugly thrashing in the bed. There's no like clawing at him to fight back. She just like, she leans back, lets him kiss her, and you can strangle me at the same time. And like her hand poetically falls to its side.
Right. I mean, it's gentle. Yeah, I'd say it's
4 seconds and her life is over.
She was an interesting character too. They could have done a little bit more with her, but the actress was really interesting, probably more than the character. She probably gave it more than it was supposed to.
So she's another thing that I certainly don't call it a plot hole or anything. But I do think they could have worked a little harder to make me believe that this woman was up for a fling in a hotel. Because when you first meet her, she's like a little cold, pretty matter of fact. She's not really buying into his charm when they first meet, and I have never myself gone traveling in rural Europe and stopped at like these tiny, like beautiful little chateau / hotels and picked up a woman in the tea room, basically.
Right.
But if I did, I have a feeling that it's hard to take that woman who's apparently pretty wealthy and like married. I don't think it's as easy to take someone from like stone cold, I'm not interested, to, yeah, we're doing this tonight, as quickly as the Jackal does. I think that doesn't age super well. I think,
or there could be more to him. We could see instances of people just coming, like having the Dracula allure of
exactly
something like that he could give off. But yeah,
I mean, they could have even done a few things like
it's kind of like the movie has to go here, so it just goes.
Right. And it's like they show a few establishing shots of him like eyeing her, as in like, I need to find a target like for the night, because the whole gimmick, for anyone not familiar with the movie, is like that he's in this hotel, but he needs somebody else's room to stay in case he gets like, in case they come in. I think that's like what I've kind of taken from it. So he like picks her, aside from the fact that he's probably also really attracted to her. But I think they could have solved that a little bit more if they'd shown her eyeing him as just like to your point, he's got this magnetic effect on women. He's suave, he's good looking, he's stylish, you know. But the other thing that strikes me, in the interest of time moving on, the other thing that strikes me is when they've got Walensky, they're recording his confession, and they're trying to get information out of him, and he's like screaming and writhing.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, okay, here are the words we heard. We heard Kleist, Jackal, fair, foreign, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And like they're working on it all night to decode what all these words mean. And all of a sudden, one guy looking at just that list of words goes, wait, what if he's talking about a foreigner with fair hair? And the other guy like draws a line on the chalkboard and he's like, that's it. And it's like, okay,
we had to get to, you know, it's a movie, they have to get from point A to point B.
They got to get there somehow. Yeah. But I mean, like, I feel like it's a similar thing when you see the Jackal working away on his plot, and he writes down three words.
Yes.
He's like, how, where, and when. And they show him like toiling away, cigarette in mouth. It's late at night. He's yawning. He's like, there's books and papers everywhere. And then you see his notebook, and it's just three words, how, where, and when. And then he just like check marks how. Yep. And you're like, oh, that took all night. Okay.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, this guy's a pro. This guy's worth every penny.
Definitely an old device used. But yeah, that is. I was thinking, I was like, man, I need to bring back my how, when, why, or where notebook that for every morning when I get up. I'm like, okay, how are we going to do this day?
Yeah, how am I going to do this day? Where am I going to go today?
I won't write down how, but I will write down the word how and put a check once I know.
Right, just a check. Right. Okay, I got the how.
Got it.
Yeah. But I think all that plays into the charm of how this movie has aged. You know, I mean, like, this doesn't make me like it any less. It kind of, I don't know, maybe in a way it adds to the camp a little bit. That gets paid off when he gets like blown away and flies into the wall at the end, you know. It works. So yeah, I think all those reasons are why I love this movie, and anybody listening and or watching should, if you're looking for a throwback thriller, this is a good one.
Available for free on Peacock. Just open it up. All right. So now we'll go with what else. This is the segment on the show where we just talk about other kinds of media and stuff we're taking in the past week or so. So, Pres, what else?
Yeah, gosh, what else? Well, in the past week or so, I've definitely... So I think I've told you this before, but I tried to commit to watching every single James Bond during the summer. And I failed. I watched most of the James Bond.
Okay.
But I got hung up on my favorites, which I think, you know, are in line with most people's favorites. I mean, the earliest ones, you know, are kind of my big three. Dr. No might be my favorite. I don't know. These are another set of movies that my dad always tried to get us to watch as a kid. because my dad said that like he waited around the block to see Goldfinger, just because it was like the next best, biggest thing. And he said it was just so exciting when he saw it the first time. It was just like he couldn't stand it kind of thing, you know? So yeah, the first three, Goldfinger, Dr. No, you know, From Russia with Love, you just can't beat them. I mean, anytime James Bond, you know, Sean Connery shows up as James Bond, I'm there for it. Maybe with the exception of you know, the last one that was not like Ian on production sanctioned.
Oh, the Never Say Never Again. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that one's like okay, but I don't like it as much as the other ones.
Right.
I like, obviously, maybe not obviously, but I like the Daniel Craig run. I'm definitely a fan. I'm sort of a fan of the Pierce Brosnan run because that would have been like when I was in high school and early college. And so those would have been like some of the ones I saw in the theaters. I can get on board with like one or two of the Roger Moore. I'm okay with the Timothy Dalton ones, but I haven't seen all the Roger Moore era, and I've only seen, Living Daylights in its entirety. I saw a part of, or no, which one?
Live and Let Die?
No, the two Timothy Dalton ones.
Living Daylights and License to Kill.
Yeah, but I don't know which one I saw all the way through. I was like just binging.
Did it have Robert Davi?
Oh, I don't know who that is by face.
Did he ride on a cello to sled?
Oh, then no.
Did he ski like on water?
I can't remember because no, not on water. Well, it started with a helicopter because he was at his friend's wedding.
License to Kill.
Okay.
Got a license to kill.
And I liked it.
No, his two are terrific.
Yeah. So recently the things I've been watching, like I'm still into the You Only Live Twice, Diamonds Are Forever. I sort of love, like, there's a lot of reasons not to like Diamonds Are Forever, but I love it. The shot in like old Vegas, and as a former resident of Los Angeles, like Vegas is got
weekends.
Yeah. Those early ones I've watched a few times this week. With Sean Connery's passing, I think I've done a little bit of a Sean Connery binge. Like I haven't gone. Like I watched Robin and Marion this week.
I really like that one.
Yeah, I didn't, because that's another one that I saw when I was in like junior high, and watched again now. And I don't think I realized how similar it was to Prince of Thieves in like plot line. Like he comes back from the Crusades, tries to get Marion back, goes to war. The only difference is he dies in Robin and Marion, and he does okay in Prince of Thieves, and Sean Connery shows up.
Yes. Well, like the Robin and Marion, because it kind of feels like that first a Lego sequel before there were Lego sequels to the Robin Hood story.
Yeah,
which is interesting. Which it's kind of like, I mixed the titles up. The Mask of Zorro, with Banderas, and the Mark of Zorro from like the old days. It kind of is a sequel to it, but it kind of might not be. But they kind of play that way. Definitely, this would be more to the Errol Flynn, Robin.
Well, I love the Errol Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went through a whole Robin Hood like thing when I was a kid. I've got the Errol Flynn right here.
There you go. Yes.
I love that version. But what's so great about, I read this quote today about Sean Connery, Harrison Ford's tribute to Sean Connery. And
that was good.
Well, I don't know if it was, I think the article I read it in was an article about Harrison Ford's little tribute to him, but it was quoting Harrison Ford from an interview from the early 90s or late 80s for Last Crusade, where Harrison Ford said, there's only 12 years difference between me and Sean Connery. He says, but the reason it works is that I look much younger than my age, and Sean looks much older than his. and Robin and Marion is a great example of that, because he still had a couple decades left in his career.
Yeah.
But he completely, Sean Connery completely owns the role of older guy back from the grizzled
Right.
war fields, like not what he used to be, and he was not like
Well, he didn't break
what
out
I
till he was
was.
32. So
No, exactly. Like
yeah.
he hit, he hit older anyway, uh, but I mean, it's like he still had plenty of days to go, plenty of years to go in his career before he started playing old men.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it really worked. The gray in the beard, the hair loss. I'm a real fan of like the stud actor who just owns the hair loss the way he has. It reminds me a lot of me. I'm
Gotcha.
an incredibly good looking guy
Well,
who just like owns
well,
hair
he wore a toupee through his Bond years, so he was already balding and hair thinning when he got Dr. No. So
I
he
did
wore,
not know that.
yeah, he wore a toupee all through his Bond years.
Like even in the first one in Dr. No, that's crazy.
Because that was one of the things where they wanted him, and I think Fleming kind of complained, and they were like, "Well, wear a toupee." Like, we're not gonna, because he did his test. But yeah,
Cool.
so he was balding then, but
Yeah.
wore toupee. But no, yeah, I love Sean. People know I'm a big Bond guy, so.
Right. Now, so that's what I've been doing lately.
As I sit here, my Bond wall.
I know this is awesome. This is cool.
So
I wish I'd watched Moonraker before this to see Michael Lonsdale in action.
yeah.
But that'll be one of my next ones. But I've got a lot of, after talking to you, I feel like the question's already answered, like what I will be watching next week. 3 Days of the Condor, the Sandbaggers. Like I've got a Moonraker. I've got a list. May I ask you what you have been watching this week?
Oh, well, I started The Undoing on HBO. Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant, and it's a little kind of scandally mystery thing. It's pretty good. Looking forward to that. There's 2 episodes now, but I'm only watched one just because I don't know, time, and just felt like watching other things at the time it came out. That's good. Watching wise, I already talked about stuff on the previous one I recorded, but I also audio wise, like podcast wise, I'm not quite through it all, but there's a podcast called from Wondery. Have you heard of them before? They're like this, I wish I come up with half the shows they come up with network, and they make money doing podcasting.
Yeah.
Weird thing. They have one called they started it earlier in the year or started the end of last year. Or no, they started. Never mind. It's called American Election Wicked Game.
Oh.
And what it does, and it's caught up. I think it's completed now that when we're recording this, the election was yesterday. But it's a podcast and it's really great. They start with each episode is one of the American elections from Washington up through Trump Clinton. That's what they've done. And I'm sure they'll wait a year or something and do Biden and Trump.
Right.
And
that's how long it's going to take to figure out Biden Trump. Right.
Yeah. It's documentary style, plays kind of like an audio book, has like cut scenes from dialogue that is, some of it they have to make up, and they have disclaimers that this might not have been actually what was said. And they have it's usually the narrator acting it out. So it gets kind of cheesy, but it's got really dramatic music, but it's really factual. And it's really just crazy to see some of the stuff they pulled during elections and during the forming of the United States and the parties, and just how some people behaved. Like one political tactic was, I think, to call like Andrew Jackson's wife a whore or something. And so when he got elected, he just took it out on all these people. Like it was, it's crazy. And it's straight factual. It doesn't play a bias. It just plays it through. So if there's people worried that it's going to be some Libby thing, it's very middle of the road. It plays facts. If you get mad at just factual things that happen, I guess it's not for you, but it's very entertaining and just eye-opening just to see how the election, where we were appalled at things that Trump did, there were elections going on back then that were just ugly stuff, just similar like it. So we haven't come that far in dirty politics play, and things like that. But it's a fascinating show. It's very similar to shows they've made, like they've made one on the history of Jaws, history of Psycho, that play like just telling the story of how they're like usually multi-part series, but this one's definitely one of the best ones I've heard from them. But that's if you're interested in American elections and things like that.
That's interesting. I love reading about like the Revolutionary era, you know, the I'd say like 1760 through like 1820 or something, you know, like the founding. And
I had a college history class that was almost exact. It was like the founding of America to the Civil War. I think it was right to the start of the Civil War. It was like all that.
That's a crazy interesting time, because I would echo that statement about, you know, everything we think that has been crazy these days it's not that it's happened before, but something equally horrific has happened in the past that we've already forgotten about. Like, great examples are, I think it was Henry Clay beating a fellow senator, like to the point of unconsciousness on the Senate floor, like over a disagreement. If that happened now, you know, like now we're like, oh, like he said the F word, you know, to AOC. And you're like, okay, well, that is bad. And you shouldn't do that. If you're a public servant representing like people, you shouldn't do that. That's not classy. But like this guy maimed one of his colleagues with his, you know, like, and no one, like they were like, everyone's like, no, they'll work it out, stay back, you know. And I mean, even things between Jefferson and Adams got so ugly.
Oh yeah.
Those guys were like best friends for like a good long while, and even died like as friends. But when they were opponents in the middle there, it's like the amount of slander Jefferson was willing to publish about Adams. Like, you're like, wow.
Well, it's funny because I think we tend to think, since it's so many generations away, that everybody was just proper and polite.
Right. Oh,
and it's like, no, they're probably worse. They're probably drunk. I think, history's shown us that most of them were drunk a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That's just what they couldn't drink water. That's what they had. And I mean, there were stories. I mean, in this thing, you find out like Lincoln was like willing to like punch people for stuff, like and like this, you know, honest Abe, all Abe, like I'll hit him in the face or something. Like he would threaten. I think there was a what got him into wanting to run for offices is he witnessed some like voter suppression in a line during an election and threatened to punch these guys, like starting to go throw blows with these guys if they didn't get out, and they did, and that's when he started getting into politics and things like that.
When Lincoln was young, all the accounts are that he was like a physical person, tall and like muscular, like raised on a farm, and apparently there's no like real record, but like apparently a very skilled wrestler.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Could like subdue somebody fast.
Yeah.
I think there are a few more like actual recorded accounts of people like Jackson or Teddy Roosevelt, like actually roughing someone up later in life. Like, I mean, there's the famous story of Andrew Jackson apprehending his own would-be assailant. Have you heard about that? Like,
no.
Jackson got like they're in a crowd somewhere, I don't know where, and a guy jumps out of the crowd with a gun and pulls the trigger, but the gun jams. And so Jackson's like traveling with the bodyguard, and the bodyguard's like, hey, you. And Jackson's like, no, I'll take care of him myself. And Jackson like breaks 3 ribs, like fractures an eye socket, basically like puts the guy on the ground like by himself and is like, no one tries to kill Andrew Jackson. You know, like and then Teddy Roosevelt, like the most famous like story about him, right, was that he got shot at a rally before he took the stage, and then he just like did the speech.
Yeah.
You know, he was just like he just went up there, he's like, look, they want to kill me, but I'm here for you, whatever. And his whole mechanism for finding out whether he was mortally wounded or not was coughing into a handkerchief. And he was like, well, if it had come out as blood, I would have known my lung was punctured and I would have been in trouble. Like, but I kept checking and no blood came out. So I just like talked until I couldn't stand it anymore. He's like, and then they rushed me to the hospital after, whatever. And you're like, all right, that is like politics has been a crazy place. It's not now. it's always been crazy,
Yeah.
It's relevant because my third book, all those guys are characters in my third unpublished book that's being shopped around to publishers right now. So I'm not ready to like unleash it on the world, but
Right.
I drew from years of recreational reading about like the founders and everything. And not all of them are characters in the book, but Jackson is, and everyone before Jackson.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Bringing it back around.
Yeah.
Back to the book. So I'm excited to see what comes of that one for sure.
So here's my plug, my only like plug of the night, other than go watch Day of the Jackal, is that I'm, knock on wood, hoping for it. I'm going to release a book on Black Friday. It's the only time I've ever tried anything like this, but it was written in the last few like weeks and months.
Okay.
It is about 2020. It's about an alien who, on his study abroad program, he is assigned to Earth, and he's pumped because Earth is the party planet, and he thinks it's going to be like an easy time here on Earth, just to like sit back and enjoy it. But he arrives on January 1st, 2020, and he's assigned for the year, and so it's one letter home per day. It's a collection of letters from heaven. Yeah. And basically it's him learning about humans, having no knowledge previously. He doesn't really study too hard before he takes the trip. And all the stuff that happened this year, like as a writer, you're like, man, we are living in crazy times. It would be stupid of me not to try and capture that. So yeah, my book that'll come out on Black Friday is the chronicling of 2020 day by day through the eyes of an extraterrestrial who's here to party, but he doesn't really get to party.
Excellent. Well, I would like to party with that book. That sounds great. But that will do it for today's episode. Pres, I'm always really excited to see and talk with you, and I appreciate you coming on. But you got this third book coming, but where else can people find your happenings, find your books?
Yep. You can find my books on Amazon. It's just amazon.com/author/Pres Maxson. But you can find that link either through Instagram. It's just @Pres Maxson, same handle on Twitter.
All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD. You can find my written work at whysobblue.com. I'll return tomorrow, 4K Blues Day. Till then, always remember to keep the positivity in your online film chatter.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at thebrandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at thebrandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.